Wow. Before we start, I just wanted to pause for a moment. I got to sit next to Dr. Mukwege at dinner 2 nights ago and had no idea what was going to reveal itself in his session. And it was just this emotional devastation listening to him, and yet this just amazing, this just courage and radical compassion. And then Darren talking about radical leaning in, listening, reconfiguring. And so thinking about how all these themes come together, I cannot think of a better person than my dear friend Christiana Figueres. Welcome back to the Skoll World Forum stage. It's such a gift to have you here with us at the forum.
Thank you, Lindsey.
For me, this is a deep personal joy, as we haven't been together in a long time. It was 8 years, I believe, since I saw you last in person. And we saw each other at the Divinity School the other night, and I was struck by something. In this session, last year, Amal Clooney and her husband, George, graced this stage. And to me, you're kind of like the George Clooney of climate. You just keep getting better and better and better.
Like old cheese.
So I'm going to go ahead and get started, and I'm going to first talk about your podcast, which I absolutely love. If you have not listened to it, I totally encourage you to. There is nothing better in the middle of a menopausal hot flash in the middle of the night to put on Christiana. It is aptly named Outrage and Optimism. I think these are emotions that lots of us are cycling through on a daily, if not hourly basis. And you've famously coined the phrase stubbornly optimistic or stubborn optimism. I'd love it if you'd talk about what forces in your life shaped that stubborn optimism, and how do you envision directing that stubbornness in the next year?
Well, first of all, thank you, Lindsey. Thank you for inviting me back, and thank you to everyone who has contributed to just amazing, amazing experiences, either from the stage or in personal conversations. I am truly grateful for that. Yeah, I don't always get much positive reaction to the term stubborn optimism.
Oh, I love it.
And I don't get a positive reaction for 2 reasons. One, because I think it's very elusive, especially right now, to touch the energy of optimism. Yeah. It's very elusive. It's very difficult. And the second is because the word stubborn doesn't always land very well with people. So I think it's important to understand what is underneath there. First of all, it's not a blind optimism. It has to do with being able to touch not an empty faith or even an empty hope, but rather a grounded sense that we do have it within us. If we look for it, we do have an agency within us that allows us to be able to make the reality that is out there malleable in our hands. The fact that we are faced with circumstances, the fact that we're faced with situations does not mean that we have to be victims to them. And I say that with deep respect for the stories that we've just heard from Denis. What I think was very beautiful in that conversation was his teaching us, because it was a teaching, his teaching us that even in the face of the most horrible cruelty, that those women themselves rise to their own defense and to expecting, wanting, and working toward a world of justice. That was a teaching. That is what I mean by optimism. I don't mean ha-ha.
Yeah.
Okay, this is not about ha-ha. And the stubborn piece has to do with determination. It has to do with grit. It has to do with perseverance. It has to do with, yes, understanding that there is a lot that is broken now. But we ain't not going to give up.
Amen. So it's a perfect segue into something I think about a lot. I've been blessed to have a career in social impact, and I still believe that almost everything is solvable with the right mix of creativity, capital, and will. In this audience and online, we have some of the most creative change makers in the world. Last panel, we had some voices representing some extraordinary amount of capital in the world. So let's maybe zero in on the will piece, because I think that's what you're getting at too. And this stubborn optimism, which I agree sometimes sounds almost like Pollyannish or cheerleaderish instead of what I think you're really getting at. What's your advice to people in this room about building capable, connected will, right? That in this moment when people are feeling disillusioned or disappointed or disconnected, and if you had to point to one action that maybe everyone, as they disband, we have 100 different countries represented here, as they go back home, what's the one action you might encourage everyone to think of that they could take together and prioritize right now?
I was very taken when I walked into this room first, X number of days ago, and I saw the opening video. Do you remember the opening video? Who remembers the opening video? We're surrounded by the memory of the opening video. And I just thought it was a brilliant choice of a leitmotif, because there is no doubt that we're facing brokenness everywhere, in organizations, in spirits, in hearts, in systems. There is no doubt that that's where we are. And what is the opportunity? What is the lesson of life that brokenness brings? Because that brokenness, what it is doing, is nothing less than evidencing for us in an unavoidable way now the cracks that were always there, but that we had very conveniently looked away from, not listened to, not really addressed. And those cracks are now visible and visceral. And so in the art of Kitsungi, there is such a lesson for life, because when our world breaks, what the Kitsungi masters teach us is, first, the ceramic cracks along the lines of weakness. That's why it's important to study the crack, to see what are the lines of weakness that we had not seen before. Secondly, we have to then choose, and now what? What do we do? Because the first option could be, okay, this thing broke, give me the super glue, give me the crazy glue. Is that not what we have been doing for a long time? Have we not actually reached for the super glue because we're just going to put this together again? And not only are we just putting it together again, do you know what happens when you use super glue, what I call crazy glue? You get it all over your hands. Interesting. So we've been getting it all over our hands, and yet we reach for the super glue time and time again because we think that's going to fix it. Yep. And so these Kitsungi masters have taught us it's not the super glue. That's not going to repair the system. That is not going to give us, as we heard yesterday, healthy children, healthy floors, healthy communities, healthy ownership, healthy democracies. What do we need for that? What we need for that is, I think, two ingredients that are embedded in Kitsungi. The first is the lacquer that is used for this art comes from the resin of a tree. Lesson, turn to nature. As we seek to heal the brokenness, can we first turn to nature and not have nature only as the decoration in our hearts and in our homes and in our events, but rather can nature be a central component of our action. And then, after the lacquer of the tree is on, then comes the gold. What is the gold? Did you see that they have made pillows?
Yes, it's the best.
It is, I mean, it's like, I saw this yesterday when I was sitting there, I went, oh my God, they made pillows of this. So, do you know what the gold is? It's not the glitz. It's not the bling. The gold that is held by the master on that brush is the gold that comes from the master's inner journey. That is how the gold then is translated here. And so for me, the journey is, how are we going to set aside our super glue that we just pick off a shelf and go, this is the answer, plump. No, wait a minute. How do we have our inner journey to understand who are we? What is our role in this very moment? I have news for all of you. We were born for this moment. We were born for this moment, and we have to realize that, yes, this is incredibly painful, and it is sacred action. It is sacred action. And we don't bring the sacredness to any of our actions if we do not step inside and understand, where am I? The cracked vessel. Where are my cracks? Where have I been cruel? Where have I not listened? So, my friends, thank you to Skoll for putting this up, because you've been, the whole time, we've been looking at this, haven't we? And so, as we go home, can we actually remember that all of us are holding the brush of history? We're all artists. We all hold that brush of a cracked and yet a world that we can make very beautiful. And we can choose to hold the brush lightly and intentionally paint into the cracks. But only if we start from inside and not from the super glue on the shelf.
I've been thinking a lot about kintsugi, and it literally translates into golden repair, or joining with gold. And it is kind of an amazing theme, right? you reflected on tending to the broken bones in a beautiful piece on Christiana's website, which I really encourage you to read. If you could just put this up. You wrote that Dr. Margaret Mead's observation that the first sign of civilization was a healed femur bone, and you said, in our journey toward healing our fractured world, we would do well to recognize the fundamental truth about humanity. Civilization emerged not from dominance, but from vulnerability and care. Contemplate that profound moment thousands of years ago when one human decided to stop and tend to another with a broken leg, choosing compassion over self-preservation. And so I want to close on a role that we don't talk about that often from the Skoll stage, but it is the DNA, it is the gold of this community. It's really one of the things I love most about Jeff Skoll, I've known for a decade, and that is love. My heart exploded when I saw this picture you posted on Instagram, and there's something about this. 3 generations, it's so loving, it's so warm, it's transcendent. And I guess I just wanted to close because I've known you now to be one of the most loving people. Everything about you exudes love. How important is love in this moment, in change movements, and how might a future with more compassion and more faith lead us to the world we hope to leave to our children and grandchildren?
Well, I think we all know the answer to that one. That's not a difficult answer. But I think we really should consider very seriously, how would the world be different now that we have broken bones, broken systems, broken organizations, broken everything? How would the world be different if it was love and caring and kindness that was the marrow of our bones? How would it be different if in the moment of breaking a bone, what actually flows out is love and kindness? We would have a different world, and that is the world that we want.
Thank you so much. It's it's funny. I reached out to a bunch of people. I care deeply about climate, but I don't focus on it professionally anymore. And so I reached out to a number of people and said, what do you think I should ask Christiana? And I got lots of technical questions about climate and this and that. And then one person said, ask her how she has remained so stubbornly optimistic. And so if we can close where we started on outrage and optimism, what is it that's keeping you with that optimism, and what would you like to encourage everyone else in terms of nurturing their own as they leave here today?
If we understand what we mean by optimism, which is not ha-ha, then I just want to circle back to realizing that every single one of us alive now, whether 4-month-old or more, we're already the ancestors of everyone who comes after us. We are already those ancestors. Doesn't matter how old we are or how young we are. And as ancestors, we have that sacred responsibility, but more than that, the opportunity to do absolutely everything that is necessary, not the best that I can do, because the best that I can do is very often not the best that I can do. So as ancestors, our sacred responsibility and opportunity is to look at what is the best that we have done, what needs to be done, and then fill that gap. Because in filling that gap lies the future of humanity.
Thank you very, very much. This has been a gift to all of us. So everyone, stay stubbornly optimistic and be the gold that fills in the cracks. Thank you.